Good morning. Welcome to OPSEC is a Waste of Time. If you have ever taken OPSEC training, you already know about the 5 steps and all of the goofy math that goes along with it. And what I always told people when I trained was that nobody cares about that except the OPSEC program managers. It's too much. Most people only care about 2 things. What should I be worried about, and what should I do about it? So what a proper OPSEC training might look like would start with myth busting. For example, people will often say that I'm not a target because they're not famous, they're not notable, or whatever. But the truth is that bad guys want to get into companies, infrastructure, government, businesses, banking, anything that they can get into that would give them an edge, a lead, money, whatever. And it turns out that most of us work for somebody that could be described that way. And if you work for them, that means you have access. And if you have access, that means you're valuable. For example, do you know how easy it is to send an email to people that says, hey, I'm with pest control. We're going to be spraying. So if you don't want the building to be all stinky, make sure to prop open the security door. And then people prop the security door open and leave it like that for bad guys to just walk in. And that's not even counting if you actually are somebody working on an important project, something notable or interesting or valuable. And if your name is posted online because the company is bragging about you, that just puts a target on you, especially if your company is careless, like the State Department, which hopefully this isn't the case anymore, but they used to have an entire employee directory on the internet in a PDF form with their name, their position, the state and building that they worked in, the phone number, the organizational hierarchy, everything. That's absolute gold for people who want to do a little social engineering or phishing attacks. Absolute gold. But let's say you are a pretty hard target. So you're pretty good about keeping your stuff locked down, but do you still list your friends, your family, and your other connections? And should you? Because maybe I can't figure out where Zuckerberg or whoever is eating lunch this day from his profile, but maybe his sister's shows that they're meeting for lunch and where and when. The thing of it is, if you're an interesting target, then so is anybody who's connected to you. This has been a huge problem in the military and anti-terrorism, and it's true in any other situation too. The bottom line is, the more information that's out there, the more likely you are going to be a target and the easier the target you become. So the first rule of thinking OPSEC is don't be tempting. They say that if you and a friend encounter a bear, all you have to do is outrun your friend. Well, not if you're the one that's got fish dangling from your belt. So don't tempt the bear. The myth number 2, and this is just the most annoying thing ever, people say, oh, well, if they want it bad enough, they'll get it because adversaries are too strong and I can't do anything and I just give up. I forget about security entirely. That's absurd. You don't have to make it easy for them. You don't have to be careless. Take, for example, this gentleman who posted about how happy he was about his impending marriage, and the police said, hey, we're happy too. Maybe next time don't take that photo where we can clearly see in the reflection of your glasses that you are driving as you're taking that photo. Or you have companies, like I said, who are proud of their employees. Well, in this case, this was a military organization whose sniper had taken out many people in the Taliban or Afghan rebels, blah, at something. But the bottom line is that all that did was paint a target on his back, and he ended up suing them and winning because they put him at serious risk. Who needs to be a smart bad guy anyway when they make it easy? Do you know how many times companies have lost laptops, have lost thumb drives, or done something really stupid like sharing passwords using poor systems, outdated security? It happens all the time. One example is when companies post pictures or promotional videos where the names and passwords to their systems are just right there in the background somewhere and nobody thought to look. I worked for a university where the computer science department pamphlet had a bunch of people in a server room with a root name and password on a sticky note in the background, which is kind of hilarious. Then you have people who post on social media without a care in the world, like this video, which makes every person in the military or who has worked with military people cringe. It had names and photos of them and their friends, locations, building interiors with visible documents, doors, security controls, in the airplane cockpit with visible frequencies. And this had over 300,000 views. Not smart. So another example somebody might target you is they can just see by driving past your house that you've got something that they want, a really expensive TV. It's like a giant rob me billboard. That's why you don't put these boxes down by your trash. You put them in front of your neighbor's house, whichever one you hate the most. Don't actually do that, but I digress. Regardless, it doesn't have to be somebody that just happens to live in your neighborhood. What if you post this online? You say, wow, look at this cool TV. Well, you're safe, right? Well, only if they don't know where you live. So let me ask you this question. Did you turn off geotagging on your photos before you posted that? Because Adam Savage didn't. He was the co-host of the TV show Mythbusters, and basically he's a celebrity who a lot of people pay attention to, and he posted this pic of his Jeep in front of his house, which was geotagged to his apartment, which you can see from Street View is the correct house. We now know where he lives. It was just that easy. One photo uploaded with geotagging information, which I guess is kind of safe. I mean, they're not as likely to break in. You know, maybe they need a key to get past that lock. Really, how much effort is somebody going to put into getting into that house? Well, better question, how much effort do they have to put in? What if you posted about your cool woodworking project? Oh, look at my key holder. Well, it's got a picture of the key, and that key has visible ridges, and those ridges correspond to numbers that can be easily replicated. You think that's movie plot? It's not. They've done it. It's not actually even that hard. But maybe I don't know a good time to go. I don't want to go there when the dude's got his dog and his brother-in-law with, you know, whoever the house is occupied or whatever. But people post when they're going on vacation and trips all the time. Now, quick advice for you is don't do that until after you get back. Post the vacation photos after the fact, not as they're happening. Because the amount of people who have been Twitter robbed, as they say, is innumerable. The more you broadcast opportunity, the more likely somebody is to take advantage of that opportunity. And what about your family? Just because they're family doesn't mean they're safe either. And I don't mean to make you paranoid about your family. Let's just be smart about this. Don't leave out documents. Don't leave out access without any care for who can get to them. The amount of times that elderly have had their identity stolen by family is way too high. Same for military members whose families took their identity when they were overseas or otherwise deployed. Regardless of how much you trust somebody who comes into your house, are you still leaving around important documents, open safes, what have you? Because that can go badly very quickly. As anybody in security and risk assessment will tell you, opportunity is a key driver in crimes. So don't make it easy for them. Don't invite an attack by leaving the tasty stuff out. And the corollary is that hard targets are less interesting. The harder it is to do something, simply the less people are going to do it. It's just that simple. Myth number 3 is that because I'm careful, that's fine. Everything will be fine because I'm careful. Well, let's rethink that a little bit. When I said that you shouldn't post about your vacation plans before you leave, that isn't just about getting robbed. What if the insurance company finds out that you posted that information? They could deny your claim because essentially you put yourself at risk and they aren't going to cover that. Did you know that if you post things online about how much you hate your work or your job, that they might find out about it and they might do something about that? We typically refer to this as being Facebook fired. And I mentioned that you should keep your friends and relations to yourself. It's not just stalkers and criminals and terrorists that do that. So what about debt collectors? They can come after your friends and your family if they can see them, and they can use a little social engineering claim that you're going to be arrested and then ask your family for direct contact information, who they might oblige if you warned them about this kind of scam. Or they can contact your boss, your commanding officer, anybody who has authority over you, who you might want to make sure doesn't know about what's going on right here, to keep that personal business personal. And all of this is possible if you're really careless about posting who you're connected to online. And here's one that almost nobody thinks about. You take a multi-megapixel camera and you point it at your hand to take a picture of a coin or a drawing or a bug or whatever. Well, did you think about the fact that your fingerprints are visible and they might be clear enough to replicate if somebody had the technology to do so? And what does that take? A 3D printer. So researchers were able to create a 3D glove with fake fingerprints that was able to fool at least some secure devices. But this also could be used for things like fingerprint verification at a bank when cashing a check. And they could frame you for crimes, which seems a little movie plot, but let's be realistic. The point is, the possibilities aren't there if you don't freely post your fingerprints online, so maybe don't do that. Always be cautious about pointing a camera at your hand. And the other thing is that people think, well, I posted a picture of my house and it's got the house number and it shows the state that I live in on the license plate. Okay, but that's not enough to really be a risk to me. There's no way they're finding me with just that. Okay, maybe that's true. But can they also see which Facebook groups you belong to? Because that might have the city that you're in. It might even have the neighborhood, depending on who else is responding. I can learn enough about you to narrow that down and locate your exact address. And from there, it's just a matter of, what do I want to do about that? Could I burgle you, arson, frame you for crimes? Depending on who you ticked off and what they're capable of, knowing where you live is a great first step to having a bad day. And don't forget that metadata alone, the data about data, can tell people a lot about you. For example, who are you connected to? What are you posting? When are you posting? And where are you posting it from? Just by collecting this information alone, people were able to identify a secret account that James Comey was using online under an assumed name. And before I talked about breaches, this is not a theoretical. This is happening all the time. So the bottom line is to be as careful with your information as possible, because the companies too frequently aren't. The bottom line is that even if you're careful and even if you work in the industry, there are just things you cannot anticipate. And yes, this is a real photo of an angry chimpanzee lunging at a worker and a cherry picker on top of an electrical line. Guarantee he did not see that coming. Myth number 4 is another type of giving up where I just don't say anything. I find a bunker, I give up, I just gonna shut up for the rest of my life. That is not what OPSEC is about. OPSEC is not about making you paranoid, and you don't have to be a master at this. You just have to use the mindset, the basic idea of OPSEC, of information protection, to make better decisions. Do I give this information out? Was that a good idea? And so on. And I'll give you some tips. So the first rule of the OPSEC mindset is to always assume the bad guys get a copy. It could be because they got it from you. You posted stuff online just not thinking people would use it against you in that way. It's been used in court cases of all kinds. As I said before, the insurance situation or the debt collectors, people post things all the time without ever thinking about how it could come back and bite them. Or the situation where you posted it and you were careful and you did everything right, but the company lost it. Oh no, data breach, there it goes again. And the bottom line is that if it's important and sensitive information that you can't let somebody have, maybe don't post it, maybe don't provide it online, because you just can't guarantee it won't spread further from there. But generally speaking, always use the president rule. Pretend you were going to run for president someday, and if that happened, people are going to dig up every little thing about you they possibly can. At which point, if what you're posting now is something you definitely don't want coming out later, maybe don't post it at all. General OPSEC rule number 2, always assume that something is fake. For example, you didn't win money, you didn't lose money, your account is safe, your account is fine, your friends and family are fine. Bottom line, people will try to scare you, excite you, make you feel something, but mostly urgency. Urgency is the key emotion that scammers are going for. And if you feel even remotely urgent when you read something, take a few steps back. Verify directly. Don't use a phone number, don't use an email, don't use a contact of any kind that was sent to you by them. Go directly to the website and check. Here's an example of what I mean. If you get an SMS message that says, oh, blah, 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 click this link. Well, You don't really know where that link goes. Have you gotten messages from this number before? Were they for this service? Does that service send out messages of this kind? Just assume that if it's got any kind of link or phone number, it's probably fake. Always go to the website directly, log in, and see if that same information is there. Another good technique for spotting fakes when you're using apps is to validate the app against a few key pieces of information. Has it been out for a long time? Does it have a lot of users? Is it recommended by a trusted third party? For example, it's unlikely that a major corporation is going to have a link to the fake app for Facebook or whatever instead of the real one. But generally speaking, these are factors that help reduce the risk, because odds are that a fake app is not going to have tens of millions of users like the real one. So another rule that I want you to adopt is to just always assume that whatever you're using is not secure, it's not safe. As an example, I went to an urgent care center where they had these portable check-in devices. They had a strip reader for a credit card, and you put in all your medical information. And I asked them at the counter, how are these being secured? What kind of wireless encryption are they using? And of course they didn't know. So I said, okay, then I'll just assume that it doesn't have any. Please give me a paper form. And then I looked into it later, and it turned out that they didn't. They were not using proper security for these devices. The same thing happened when I was teaching a class in Alaska at a military base. Between sessions, they came to me and said, hey, we've been sending classified on this digital sender for a long time. Help me solve an argument. Is that actually secured or not? I said, I have no idea, but clearly neither do you, so maybe you shouldn't do that. Unfortunately, it was not a secured device, even though secure was in the name. They just assumed it was, and so they had to file a security incident on that and then do better next time. So what can you do? Am I telling you to be a computer expert and learn everything you can to make things safe all the time? No, that's too hard and unreasonable. So what I am suggesting is try to segregate things as much as you can. For instance, you don't have to put copies of your birth certificate, your social security card, and other sensitive information on your phone, for example. If you do have sensitive documents on your computer, well, encrypt them. There are some free tools that have a lot of tutorials to create encrypted portions of your hard drive where you can put stuff and make them safe so at least they're not out there in the open. And a really easy countermeasure that helps defeat a lot of the privacy bugs, cross-site scripting attacks, and other problems is to use two separate browsers. One for anything that you would log in for, your bank, your social media sites, etc., and one for actually browsing the internet. If you hit a website and they've got a web tracker for Facebook, the web tracker for that depends primarily on you being logged in another window of the same browser. But if they're two separate browsers, that problem goes away for the most part. All right, number 3, never share information without a clear benefit. And what I mean by that is adopt the art of withholding. Learn to say no. Learn to say close enough. And learn to be creative. So starting with no, when somebody asks you for information, ask them, what do they need it for? Why do they want this information? Is it absolutely necessary? Is there an alternative? And verify it. For example, when I went to the dentist's office, they say, what's your social security number? I said, I'm not giving that to you. Why should I? They said, well, we need it to bill your insurance. And I said, no, you don't. I called them and I asked ahead of time, and they said they do not need a social security number. They only need member ID. So I'm not giving that to you. Now what? And it turned out they didn't actually need it. Just like when I went to the video store and they asked for my social, just like when I got electricity hooked up at my house many years ago, there are lots of cases where people will ask for information because it's easier for them, but they don't actually need it. So always challenge them and be willing to say no. Also, close enough, the simple philosophy of what is the goal they're looking for here? Do they actually need this information or do they need something similar? For example, when somebody asks to verify your age because they want to show you the trailer for the new Grand Theft Auto game, they don't need to know the month or day of your birthday. They don't even need to know what year you're born. They just need to know you're over a certain age. So within the bounds of your legalities and ethics involved, which are up to you to figure out, you don't have to put in the exact information that they asked for. You can put in information that's close enough. Another example of this is when people post online, say an award ceremony for a commander or something. Very common in the military. They will list the spouse, the children, and their names, their ages, and a bunch of personal information about each of them. Why? When I post about my wife and kids online, I just say my wife, my kids. I don't name them. I don't give ages unless there's an actual reason that the age is relevant. Oh, I do have teenagers, but I just said teenagers because that's close enough. It is giving the information that is necessary and no more. Here's another example that's very easy to use. If you have a phone with GPS on it, and sometimes you like to use it to get home from when you're out and what have you, well, why do you need to put the pin down on your actual house? You know how to get around in your neighborhood, right? You can put that pin down anywhere in the neighborhood, like the local store or the crossroad down the way, anything. Why paint a picture on your house where the phone, the people who run the phone, the apps in the phone, anybody who finds your phone can now find out exactly where you live? It's a simple countermeasure that costs you nothing. So the last part of this is to be creative. And the philosophy behind that is simply that if they have no reason to have the information, but they won't give you an option to proceed without it, maybe you don't have to give them the real information at all. For example, a lot of places ask you for an email to be able to download something or to access something, but why? Just so they can spam you? If that's unclear, and again, you feel that it's legal and ethical to do so, give them a fake email. There are web services out there that will give you a temporary self-destructing email that will stick around long enough to receive a verification email, and you can even respond to it, and then it just goes away. Another example of that is when you're online and you're building out your social profile. I'm going to pick on Facebook again because they're the classic example. But Facebook has a lot of really useful utility for neighborhood groups and communication. And maybe you want to be a part of that. But why do you need to use your real name for that? Why do you have to post anything like your birthday, your job, your anything? You don't. Communicating with the neighborhood works just as easily with a totally fake name as it does a real one. And here's a fun but totally unnecessary example that I do, and that's that whenever I add somebody to my contacts list in my phone, I use a fake picture and a fake name. Why? Because if somebody were to get access to my contacts either through bad app permissions, my mistake, sometimes I click the wrong thing, okay, I lose my phone, whatever. But the point is, if somebody were to find these contacts and then try calling somebody, they don't know what they're called. They have no idea what their real name is. And if they use the name that's in my phone, whoever receives that call is going to say, "What are you talking about?" And that helps protect them against phishing and social engineering and what have you. And the fourth is to stay aware, because honestly, you just can't expect everything. You can't prepare for everything. So when you do have the news is trying to tell you something about a new scam, or you have your OPSEC or Infosec people trying to teach you, hey, this is one of the ways bad guys will come at you, don't tune them out. I literally read an article in the newspaper many years ago and then went to work and heard that scam being played out in front of me as I walked in. And I told our front desk person, stop responding to that person on the phone. They want you to push those numbers so it unlocks our system for their external use. Don't do that. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't read that article. On a corollary, if you are an OPSEC program manager, an Infosec program manager, a security awareness program manager, don't abuse employee attention. There is no value to a rah-rah poster that says, OPSEC is good, security is good, be safe, yay. You've said nothing. You've wasted my time and yours. Have actual relevant content. Give an example. Find a way to condense the information enough that at a glance I can see, oh, hey, I never thought of that. That is something worth looking into. Okay, so now we're going to do a quick test to see if you're starting to get any of this. Think like the adversary. Say you know that somebody has a home director thing like the Echo or the Google thing, and they have an old style answering machine that you can leave a message and speak inside their house, or you happen to live close enough you can just shout through the window, and you say whatever. You can say, hey, unlock the doors, or order a bunch of things online that are embarrassing or inconvenient or what have you. And this may sound a bit movie plot, but it happened. There was a news reporter who was explaining this exact problem, and he used the words, blah, 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 order me a dollhouse. And hundreds of people ended up getting dollhouses on their doorsteps because of it, because lots of people who were watching this broadcast had that particular home director. Here's another thing to think about. What if neighbor doesn't like you for some reason, and they can see that you're leaving town for the weekend? What could they do with that information? Well, in one case, there was a guy who was minding his own business, fishing on a lake, when he got a phone call, and the phone call, on the other end, a lady says, hey, I'm curious about the dietary needs of this horse that you're giving away. And he said, what are you talking about? I'm not giving away my horse. And she said, well, according to this Craigslist ad you are. The guy rushes home and finds people crawling on his house like a pack of dogs on a three-legged cat. And they're pulling apart his porch swing, trying to dismantle his windows, and carrying off his things. He calls the police come by, and they stop the people with trucks full of his stuff. And those people had the nerve to say, but there's this Craigslist ad, we're allowed to take this. That's all it took. Somebody posted an ad in Craigslist that said, hey, I have to leave the country suddenly. It would be awful shame for all this stuff to go to waste. Just show up this house Saturday morning, take anything you want. It's all free. And here is another example, one that I was actually asked to tone down in my briefings because it was freaking people out. Bear with me and be responsible with what I'm about to teach you, please. Have you ever had an angry ex? What if your angry ex is still looking for a way to get back at you, and you post information about your upcoming wedding with the new person, where it lists the venue, the cake decorator, and details about your honeymoon? Well, how hard would it be to call any one of those things and say, hey, sorry, it turns out our plans have changed. We can't do this after all. Just go ahead and cancel the wedding hall, the cake, the honeymoon suite. How much would that suck to fly all the way out to Hawaii and find out there's no room at all? And all it would take is one phone call. Nobody would ever know. Okay, on the lighter note, if you are somebody who has taken OPSEC training before, you've probably heard this one a lot. Vary your commute to and from work all the time. OPSEC says, yeah, you should totally do that, but that's not smart. As I've already said, if there's no reason to apply OPSEC, if there's no threat, if there's no reason to do it, then don't do it. It's a waste of your time. Most of us are not under such risk that we have to worry about taking an inconvenient way to work every now and then. And if you are in a situation where that makes sense, then do it. That's how OPSEC works. Informed risk decisions. As another example, should you disable geotagging on your phone? Well, the vast majority of the time, and especially if you're being stupid and planking on weaponry, yes. But let's say you're hiking somewhere and you want to actually remember where you took a photo of this particular flower or that particular lizard. Or, worst case scenario, you want people to know the last place you were before you disappeared. In either of those situations, having the geotags on the photos you uploaded is actually a good idea. So again, discernment. It's not about denying information under all circumstances. It's denying information carelessly. Bottom line, the philosophy of OPSEC, always assume bad guys get a copy of what you post before you post something. Always assume that information that comes to you is fake, whether it's in an email, a phone call, a voicemail, a SMS message. If it arrives to you and it makes you feel urgent, afraid, or anything like that, it's probably fake. Never share information without a clear benefit. I'm not saying be an asshole. If you're traveling and somebody says, oh, where are you from? They probably don't mean your street number, probably not even your city. It might just be the state. Go to the highest level possible to keep the conversation flowing. And stay aware. Be aware that there are new and clever ways people are coming at you that maybe you never thought of before. And all it takes sometimes to avoid that problem is a little bit of awareness. All right, if you want to learn more about me and the kinds of things I can help teach you, there's my YouTube channel, of course, where you're probably watching this, and also my website where you can keep up to date with the things I'm blogging about and my books that I'm publishing, including the one about my 16 years with the National Security Agency and what that was like. But otherwise, leave any questions that you have in the comments section below and I'll try to answer what I can. Hope you had a good time. Take it easy.